Hello, and welcome to the Organ Files podcast. My name is Mark, and I'm going to read you a short disclaimer. We are amateur podcasters simply for entertainment. If we misquote or offend, it was not on purpose to do so. Also, we're recording from an attic, so if you hear any weird noises, you're probably meant to hear it. We also have a dog that likes to listen in as we record these live sessions, so you might hear my dog, and we have neighbors nearby. Thank you and enjoy. Here's Elliot Bowman.
Thanks, Mark. On my way here, I was thinking we should get like a laugh track or like an audience sound, like like the sound of people like clapping as like they introduce, like a guest or something like that, because it's all too quiet besides me and you in here, and Jar Jar.
Yeah, we do our own laughing and then Jar Jar.
Yeah. It's already freaking December 3rd, which is just insane. I can't believe it's already December. Time's just flying on by for us, and
wild.
Already 2022 almost, and before we know it, we'll really have flying cars and jetpacks and
another COVID virus. What's the one? The Omicron.
Omicron.
Yes.
Which sounds like a bad name for like a tech company or something.
I thought it was a villain from Transformers.
Right, that's exactly right.
Well, hey, speaking of December and the holiday season, we will do our shout out to our best sponsor right now, which is Video Games Plus and Level Up Frozen Yogurt. They're open 7 days a week off Stevens in Roseburg, Oregon. The Level Up Frozen Yogurt is actually going to be closed for the month of December, so we'll be very clear about that. So if you're listening to this podcast now, they do shut it down for a month so they can focus on the Video Games Plus side, which has a lot of great items for Christmas presents. So
good to know. Yes. Don't show up and be mad if you heard this.
That's right.
Try to get your yogurt.
Yep, we're very clear. And the gift cards are awesome. They're like giant little mushrooms from, they're really cool looking.
Toadstool.
Yes. So the funny part about that is I think it's just on the fringe of copyright. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's why I was almost going to say, hey, it's from Mario Brothers. But I'm like, right. And then I was like, sue.
Yeah.
All right. So today's topic, we're going to talk about a commune in Glendale called New Odessa.
Glendale, Oregon.
Because
it's the Organ Files podcast.
Yes. Yes. And this one's still right on the border of Douglas County there. The information I'm going to share from the New Odessa was actually published by a gentleman named Theodore M. Sweat.
It's a good name.
It's a great name.
I feel like we read a lot of good names.
I cannot believe the amount of great names we come across. It's just good stuff. But so he did this really great, it was actually about an 80-page book he did about New Odessa. He did some really good research in history. We'll go ahead and get started here. So New Odessa. So if you go down the I-5 or up, depending which, where you're coming from, there is a sign. It's not Utopia or New Odessa or even Julia. Its original name.
Okay.
It actually reads Glendale, 7 miles. So it's just, Glendale is just a few miles north of the Josephine County line, but lies within present Douglas County.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually at one point it was called Julia.
Okay.
Yeah.
The commune was?
No, the city.
Oh, Glendale was called
Julia.
That's interesting.
Yes. Now, from survey records, the site of New Odessa was located on property right outside Glendale. It was a colony of young Jewish intellectuals who had taken a hard and lengthy route from Odessa, a seacoast city in southern Russia, and they arrived in August of 1881 by rail, by ship, by wagon, and by foot. They came to this corner of southwest Oregon with no money, but with high ideals to start a Marxist commune, which would last from 1882 to 1887. So there's the start there. Now I'm going to go, but what I want to do is paint the picture of why they came to Oregon.
Right.
Okay? We're going to go back to Russia.
Right.
And we're going to see what was going on in Russia that sent these folks over here, okay? We're going to start with the reign of Alexander III. Was one of militant reaction. For Jews, it brought a reign of terror. Prior to his rule, there was already sporadic, they called them pogroms, which were anti-Jewish riots, all of which had occurred in Odessa. There's one in 1820, another in 1859, and a third in 1871.
So it was like anti-Semitic riots.
Yep.
Like, get out of here, Jews.
Yep.
We don't want your Hanukkah dreidels.
They didn't want none of it. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't around in...
During the reign of Alexander III, the pogrom became a regular occurring event until the fall of the monarchy in 1917. So for almost 100 years. And if you're Jewish and lived in Odessa, Russia,
yeah, that's what I was
there's random riots.
Stay inside.
The attacks upon Jews, although not directly ordered by central government, were tolerated by it. The rioting usually took place for several days before the government would take necessary action to stop them. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the best
Sounds familiar.
It's amazing, isn't it? I'm just blown away.
History repeats itself, doesn't it?
It's so sad. I don't. When I was reading this, I really was flabbergasted that this was going on, and every country's got, I don't know what it is they got against Jewish people. It's like, holy mackerel, this is really bad. This is May 3rd, 1882. Russia adopted the following rules that were called the May Laws. Number 1 was no new Jewish settlers were allowed in the villages or hamlets. Number 2, Jews could not own and manage real estate or farms. And number 3, Jews were not allowed to do business on Sundays or any other Christian holiday. These temporary rules remained in effect until the Revolution of 1917. Now, the effects of these laws was that many Jews found themselves homeless. For example, a Jewish villager returning from a trip would be declared a new settler and forever barred from his home.
So he just like goes on vacation, he comes back, and they like stop him at the gates of like the village.
Yes, you're a new settler. Sorry. It's like, hey man, we just talked 2 months ago.
My address is in there though. Yeah. It's I could see my house. Like my yards are behind you, man. Like my dog is staring at me. Like, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Rural residents who went to the big cities to worship in the synagogues were forced to prove legal residence before they could return home. Even
they just forcing them to find other places to live is what they were doing. They were just making it difficult for them to stay there. So
about this time, America in the 19th century was a country of great optimism, firm in the belief of a manifest destiny. Vast areas of land had been opened with the Louisiana Purchase, and America had been founded on religious utopian ideals. So by the 19th century, over 1,000 various concepts of a utopian community had been established in America. I did not know that. New Odessa was to be one of those. Now, the word utopia is taken from Thomas More's book by that name. It translates literally, though. Do you know what it translates to? What does utopia mean?
Utopia means a place of good food, beer on tap.
Great,
any football game that I could ever want to watch, and a good sandwich, and nobody bothering me.
I love it.
That's actually, the Webster Dictionary right there.
That's pretty good. And honestly, that's what I thought too.
Eliav Dictionary.
I always thought utopia meant like a peaceful society that's run, know. But no, it actually translates to nowhere.
Okay.
And the concept of this definition is that nowhere on earth is there a perfect society.
Okay. So it's like reverse psychology.
Yep. So we had about 65 young intellectuals who were actually they're Jewish. They left their colleges in Russia and they just were done with it. This is right about that time, not that long after the May laws were passed. Like, we're done. So they left Russia and they went all through Western Europe to get on a boat and landed in New York.
Right.
Okay. Now, when they actually, all 65 of them kind of showed up at once, and actually the Jewish community that's already settled in New York kind of welcomed them in. Right. And they didn't speak a word of English. So when they brought them in, it was a lot of translation, that kind of stuff, but they all of them live in like really kind of one flat in New York. Really cool.
Did it say like what part of New York? Like,
yes, it was a house on Pell Street.
Okay.
Pell. When they actually got here, they're not knowing what heavy labor they might have to do. So they accepted all kinds of manual jobs. So they wanted to learn everything when they got here. Really
they wanted to be part of society. They wanted to be, functioning and,
That's exactly what it was. So they learned any trade they could learn. They did. That kind of stuff is really cool. In fact, there's even they purposely did not seek out anything that would be associated with being a merchant, because they didn't want that stigmatism or that old. Right.
Right. Trying to take over and be behind all like the power of import and export.
Yes. Right. Now, some went to Boston to be longshoremen, while others worked on railroads rapidly being constructed across the country. Meanwhile, between 50 and 60 of them, they really just stayed in the house on Pell Street. They lived in a communal life and divided the household tasks and pooling their financial resources. Educational meetings were held at night where they learned English, discussed philosophy, and made plans for their future colony. Michael Halprin was a constant advisor. He actually ordered 2 scouting parties were sent to different parts of the country looking for sites for their commune. Okay. Mm-hmm. One group went to Texas in the Midwest.
Ooh.
Well, the scouts worked there for 3 months on farms in each to test the area. And they're like, you know what?
All right.
They found the land in Texas and Kansas.
Red flags.
Oh, yeah. The official word is they found the land in Texas and Kansas just too arid and the heat depressing. Now, the other group, though, they went to Oregon and Washington. And after looking over several possibilities, they recommended a section of 760 acres near Glendale, Oregon. It was forest with only about 150 acres had already been cleared and was suitable for cultivation for having a little farm.
It's so random. I wonder how they stumbled across, because Glendale is not it's not a metropolis by any means.
Even today, like
it's got to be like 2,000 people, if that. I don't even know if it has that.
Isn't that wild? And I've only been in Glendale one time in my entire life.
Drive through is really what you end up doing.
You really have to know about it to seek it out. Glendale's, you're right, it's such a small little town.
There is a really good bakery, not to get off subject too bad. Heaven on Earth, have you been there? It's in Azalea. It's in the same area. That's like the only real kind of purpose to kind of go down there.
Heaven on Earth does huge cinnamon rolls.
They have huge cinnamon rolls.
And they're what will do me in someday. Yeah. I've already accepted this fate. Yeah. My family knows that I'm going to die eating a cinnamon roll. Right. And it's probably going to be a big one like that.
They are so good. Last time I went there, they had fresh baked cookies to eat while you're in line to order your cinnamon rolls.
The lady who owns it is super nice, super friendly lady.
Yeah.
I've met her several times. Oh, yes.
So I can see why they settled down there, because it was heaven on earth.
There you go.
Circle it back.
On the property, there were 2 modest houses that they could live in. The cost for the entire 760 acres with the 2 houses, $4,800.
It's not a bad penny.
And the guy who owned the property, which the crazy part is the guy who owned the property was the guy who founded Glendale. It was him and his wife, Julia. So the town was still named Julia. Okay. And they said, hey, if you want the property, just do we'll take a down payment at $2,000. So the cool part is so Halprin, the leader of the colony, he actually worked with a bunch of Jewish communities in New York and raised the money for them to move. So that was really cool. A bunch of already established Jewish people in New York helped them get the down
fundraised.
Yes.
Yeah, they probably did a good old Jewish cook, like a bake sale maybe, a little latkes, a little matzo ball soup,
I love that sense of community. I think that's, and we're going to come across that more. The original property in New Odessa was purchased by Samuel Kermont from Hyman Wollenberg, Hyman, Hyman Wollenberg, and his wife, Julia. 2 records at the Douglas County Title Company recorded this sale on March 8th, 1883.
Year I was born.
1883? 100
years later.
Yeah, 100 years later. I love it. Once they got the property secured, all the New Odessa or the Odessa immigrants, they went by wagon and by foot. They first went to Portland, and then they went down to Glendale.
Man, by foot? Again, we got people walking long distances by foot.
The whole way. None of them died. Here's the crazy part, too, once again, though. None of them died. They all made it.
No accidental gun shooting.
Okay. The property extended from Windy Creek north across Cow Creek and over the ridge to Wolf Creek.
Okay.
And they were calling it New Odessa was the official name. Now, in general, these nonconformist youths found acceptance in the area. By this time, Douglas County had several prominent Jewish families.
Really?
Yes. As in the East, the first Jews to arrive in the Northwest were mainly those who had come from Western Europe. Some of them were merchants that had worked their way up the coast from San Francisco after the California Gold Rush. The fundamental philosophy of the colony was Marxist. Each man works accordingly to his ability, and each man receives according to his needs. There were fixed hours of labor and assigned tasks not only on the farm and in the forest, but also in the kitchen and in the house. Men and women shared all the tasks, field and house. So it was a straight up commune, like everyone, you do your equal parts. They actually had their own articles of incorporation that they organized as a voluntary community with the purpose of mutual assistance in the perfection of and development of physical, mental, and moral capacities of all its members, making no differentiation between man and woman.
I mean, it sounds like a good start to something great.
Utopia,
exactly. Sounds like nothing, but also something.
Reading this last night, I was telling my wife, I'm like,
why don't we do this?
Yeah.
Let's go get a bunch of acres and
of course now the price, of course if it was $4,800.
I'd in today's money.
No, you're like probably $1 million now. Just for the lumber alone. The average age of these settlers was very young though. At this time of the signing of the Articles of Incorporation, the president, Peter Fearman, was 20. Moses Free, the secretary, was 22, and the treasurer, Abraham Hedren, was 23.
So just youngsters.
Yep. Among the very first people to show up on the property, there's 28 men and 6 women.
28 men and 6 women. That's not the best odds you got there, fellas.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
So you're going to see where this...
I don't think they really thought about that one.
So if you're listening to this podcast right now, and the same when I was reading this book, I'm like, oh boy. Yeah, you'll wonder because this thing only lasted 5 years.
Yeah.
So you got to wonder
that's a part of it, right? Yep. It's got to be a part of it.
Oh boy. Since the majority of the members had been university students, their diversions remained mainly intellectual. The chief nightly entertainment was to gather in the assembly hall to discuss, argue, and debate. I like that.
Just over society topics or
everything. I think that's a cool part.
Books
they were big
philosophy.
On philosophy. Yes. In addition to the study of mathematics and English, one night a week was spent in self-criticism, at which they were encouraged to pass judgment on one another and suggest ways in which to improve the community.
You know what, though? Because you got to hash out your problems, though. I mean, that's a smart idea because you don't want to sit there and it's like even like in a marriage, you don't want to bottle stuff up. You're gonna want to, get it out in the open. And if you got that many men, you got a lot of testosterone running around. I can't imagine, the women probably just sat back and let the men have at it,
It's just so funny. I was wondering about it, like, if it's one night a week, and it would be funny, like, hey, man, back on Tuesday, I didn't like the way it covered it. I'm really upset about it.
Look, you mean yesterday?
Yeah,
yesterday. I was talking about yesterday.
Why didn't you say something yesterday? I'm like, it wasn't the night.
Like, it wasn't the night, right. All right, I'll wait till next week.
Yeah. Their prized possession, though, was an extensive library devoted chiefly to books on philosophy. So it was a big library. So this is really one of the cool parts. They all brought books with them. Everyone brought in different books. They had a lot of gifted books and that kind of stuff. So they had actually a really big library. A simple pleasure the members did manage to find time for and enjoy was also dancing. Even doing the most difficult tasks, the men and women would join the singing, mostly Russian folk songs and songs of their student days. Now, in the early days, they had no instruments, and they would dance to their own singing. Later on, they did get an organ. Although they knew and danced Russian dances, they ended up becoming, their favorite became the American style, which was called quadrille.
Quadrille?
Quadrille. I've never heard, I don't know if it's a style, singing or dancing.
That sounds like something that came and gone real quick as a dance style.
Yeah.
Like Gungman style, that it didn't stick around that long.
Still love it. They would, now the cool part is they would actually invite the neighboring farmers and settlers. In the otherwise isolated frontier town, the neighbors would come eagerly and join in the festivities.
Yeah, why not?
I think that's awesome. As social happenings were so rare in frontier times, the settlers would often come from great distances to take part in the dances and stuff. So we're doing great. Colony's doing great, right? They're cutting down lumber, by the way, selling it to the railroad because of the 760 acres, only 150 of it was actually habitable. The rest of it was forest. So they could cut down lumber. They're selling the lumber when they could. Things were going good. The colony prospered and was relatively harmonious for about 2 years. And its height, it had a population of 65 up to 90. They don't know exactly. There wasn't like an official record.
Right.
They said it may have gotten up to 90 people at one point. 2 of the 4 single women became wives of male members. Now, when I read that, the other 2 women are the holdouts.
Right. The courting you think that involved to get a woman to marry you with those insurmountable odds,
Because you're on a commune, you have the same.
You got to be Leonardo DiCaprio, man.
You got to look good.
You got to be the stud.
Yeah, because everything's equal. On a commune,
Right.
You're all wearing the same clothes.
Your hair's all the same length. Your beard's all the same length. Everyone's using the same deodorant. You got to be the Italian stallion.
Other male members looked for wives in Portland and the surrounding areas.
I'm out of here.
I love that just in one
See ya.
One colonist died of unknown causes and was buried on the colony property, but the gravestone has never been found.
Knife fight.
Now, everything's going good, though, until 1883, when we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Frey joins the colony with his family.
He didn't have a first name? It was just a mysterious character,
it was
Mr.
William.
Frey.
His first name was William, so it's William Frey.
William Frey.
And he shows up with his family, and now, here's the deal. All these are younger guys, right? He's in his 30s, and he comes in with audacity that these were just a bunch of young kids. They didn't know what they're doing, so he decided he was going to lead the colony.
Right, because 30 years old is
he's 30 years old.
Pretty older than the 20-year-olds.
Yeah, he's got maybe 10 years left in his life, so he's going to lead the colony. He completely changes things on day one. He decided that their day would start at 6 a.m. with chores until 8:30. Breakfast was from 8:30 through 9:45.
Wait, they had like specific time they'd eat breakfast?
Exactly. But it was an hour and 15 minutes for breakfast, which in today's world, I'm like, I can knock out my breakfast in like 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
I'm thinking,
some yogurt or something.
Yeah, but it took me a minute to realize, okay, wait a minute. They actually probably had to make their meals by hand.
Yeah.
After 9:45, it's back to work at 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. There were no breaks for lunch. As Frey believed, there was only 2 meals a day.
10 to 4, no breaks?
No breaks.
I'm taking about 4 breaks in between that. All right.
Between 4 and 5 o'clock, dinner was served, followed by a rest period, and then on to intellectual pursuits. He made everyone scheduled. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evenings were spent studying math, English, and lectures by Frey himself on the philosophy of positivism.
Who does this guy think he is?
The audacity is amazing.
I mean, he just rolls up.
Yeah.
So he had to have heard about the commune.
Oh, yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Word
He's
of
got a
mouth.
Jewish background. I mean, yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Strolls up in his horse and carriage. He's
And
already married.
over there in Glendale.
No competition.
Yeah, he's got me exactly.
His kids were probably annoying.
Yep.
So he just shows up and
takes over.
This is Frey's place now. Listen up.
In early 1884, the membership began to polarize around the leaders Paul Kaplan and William Frey. So after 2 years there, they're kind of like, hey, man.
Kaplan need to step in there.
Yeah, I like it waited 2 years. Now, was it because when Frey showed up, like the self-criticism night was like kibosh, you know?
Went from self-criticism to positive, and then everything just went out the window.
Kaplan, one of the founders of the community and was a radical communist, was a complete opposition to Frey's concern with religion and positivism. Frey, true to his own self, would not compromise with his principles. They kind of had a vote, and Frey, before the vote was actually really done, Frey decided that they were just done. So Frey left with his family and some followers. So there were some people who actually really liked Frey more than what they had going on.
Uh-huh.
So he leaves, but sadly that didn't solve the disunity in the colony. Shortly after he left, there was a fire in the community building, and the treasure library was completely destroyed.
Okay, well, I mean that's not sketchy or anything.
Yeah,
you know, Frey leaves, tosses a torch as he goes.
Oh man, the accusations. So they lose the library. Their whole thing's been turned upside down. Marxism was practiced even more rigorously after he left, but the idealism had begun to wear off. Ambitious and ideological-oriented members worked harder, but others shrieked their responsibilities. As long as they worked, income was not a problem, and they kept making additional payments on the original mortgage of property, but they still owed $2,276 with interest. Foreclosure proceedings were recorded in February 1888, and the lands of New Odessa were returned to the original holders.
Interesting.
Now here's the funny part, though. It was not until December 31st, 1915, by action of the Corporate Commission of the State of Oregon, that the community of New Odessa was actually officially dissolved. For a short period of time, life in New Odessa was secure and fulfilling for young Russian Jewish immigrants, had found a haven for religious persecution. They were allowed to practice their beliefs. The agriculture was a means to Jewish survival. As long as they kept their political ideologies within their community, they were not restricted or hampered in their style of living. Life was secure on the basis of physical necessities, for they had adequate shelter. The community had income from its woodcutting, and they had ample food, which grew in their fields and took from the woods and streams. Basically, everything was going fine. It broke down. The last known survivor of New Odessa was Peter Fuhrman. He became a chemist and later a millionaire on the basis of his discoveries. Fuhrman also maintained his interest in communism. And after the Russian Revolution, in 1917, he returned to Odessa. He believed that the first priority of the peasants was in education. So for the cost of $1 million in 1920, he built a pencil factory in Odessa, hoping to give everyone the tools of writing.
Wow. I was going to say, who the heck builds a pencil factory? But you got some ideology behind that. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
I loved it. Sadly, as soon as the factory was in production...
Sadly.
There's always a catch. As soon as the factory was in production, it was confiscated by the Soviet government, and disillusioned firemen returned to the United States.
And the person that confiscated was William Frey.
You know, that'd be amazing if it's tied to that.
Right.
He lost interest in the Communist Party and died without heirs in 1950 at the age of 94.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was like the last man standing, kind of?
Last one from New Odessa, completely. The whole commune, everything. The ideology of New Odessa reached beyond its geographical borders. When the colony broke up in 1887, really all the membership dispersed throughout the entire country of the United States. And each of its own way made it on the totality of what is called American Judaism.
Interesting. I wonder how they all departed.
See you
later.
Yeah.
Everyone just kind of left different days and times, and man, that would have been so interesting to be part of that.
Wouldn't it be? Yeah, been amazing.
Yeah.
The things I was surprised, I was really happy to see that they were welcomed by the community.
Right.
The sad part was when they did the bankruptcy and the auction of the property, they were expecting someone from the commune to come say, "Oh no, we'll keep it," or something like that.
Sure.
No one showed up or fought them. They were all gone by then. So they're like, it was 1888. They're like, "Hey, where's who owns the property?" And they're like, meh. So
man, it's that they just allow some outsider to show up, but maybe it's because they were so welcoming. The idea of community.
Yes.
Allowed somebody, they allowed somebody to come into the community. So that was almost kind of like their downfall of being so, open and, free, I guess, to allow, a stranger to come in and kind of change their mind on things.
That's the hard part when you're like, welcoming and having like an open door policy,
right,
and that kind of stuff, and people take advantage.
Right.
That it's hard. It's a hard thing. The other thing that there's another story I read, actually. So I always read from two sources. I read in a book by R.J. Geyer called Douglas County Chronicles. He mentioned that one of the reasons that the commune went down was that the cheap Chinese labor was, they were a lot cheaper to buy wood from, because they would, so one of the main sources that the commune had was selling wood, but they were selling it at full market price when the Chinese immigrants were, a lot cheaper. So they say that was they weren't making money anymore. So
got to pay the mortgage.
Yeah. So that's what it all dispersed out. But great story.
New Odessa.
New Odessa. Yeah.
Glendale, Oregon.
Into present time, there is a ranch.
Yeah.
And the guy who wrote the book, he even tried to go out there to see what he could find. And he said the only thing he found was a possible planked to the floor of the ground.
Oh, really?
That oak growth had covered over, but he could see where trees were maybe cut back at one point.
Okay.
And that kind of thing. But yeah, and then apparently there's a grave out there somewhere too.
Okay. And the buildings that were there at one point,
all gone.
They probably just demolitioned them or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm sure there's relatives that somebody's great grandfather or something like that was it was part of New Odessa in Glendale, Oregon,
How cool would that be to have that legacy?
Right, exactly. That's interesting.
I loved it. I thought it was really fascinating.
Yeah,
story. Now,
thanks for digging all that up.
Oh, no, great. I love this. History is so fascinating, especially,
something really so random like that, because you never... the concept of just leaving your home, because of persecution and just moving thousands of miles away and with 80 of your buddies or whatever, or 60 of your buddies, and being like, well, let's start a community here, and I don't know. You can't do that today.
It's not the same resolve.
Yeah.
And when you get religion into things, it complicates stuff sometimes, and as long as everyone's on the same page, it's not too bad. But you get some guy who comes in here look,
right?
I don't like your mornings. We're gonna start at 6 a.m. now.
In 2 years, that's really an accomplishment for people in their 20s.
Yeah.
To stick something out. You know what I mean? Because in your 20s, you think you just do whatever you want and free, just to run amok. But I don't know.
The cool part is that them all being from a university. They were smart people.
Right.
That's the cool part. I mean, these people they come this far and bring their books with them and that kind of stuff. Anytime a library
they had something they believed in.
Yeah.
Right. They had one common goal in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a business. They were just like a partnership. Yeah.
Speaking of this, and being on the topic of, I did a Google search. I was trying to find anything more in Douglas County ties to, the Jewish community, that kind of stuff. And the craziest story I found actually had to do with Roseburg is named after a guy named Aaron Rose. And there was a guy who was based in San Diego who was trying to find out, because there's a part in San Diego that's named after a Rose down there, and there's very strong Jewish ties down in San Diego. So he assumed that Aaron Rose was Jewish as well. So he went to go do the research and dig for it, right? And as he was digging, it was hard because there was nothing that pointed that said exactly he was Jewish, right?
Right.
But he couldn't find anything that says he wasn't either. Okay.
Right.
So he did this crazy article. He started going around see if any research that was done by any of the colleges around here, if anybody had anything that was pick up on it. It was the same answer from everyone. We can neither confirm nor deny. There's just not enough proof. They tried to trace his ancestry back to, I think it was Missouri or Wisconsin where he came from or something like that. When they traced it back there wasn't any proof of it. Right. So it really was kind of the matter of fact. It was okay, maybe he wasn't Jewish,
Right.
But the funny part was, everyone that he did business with in Roseburg, the railroads, the restaurants, anywhere, farms, any business venture they had was all with Jewish partners. So there is
there's some sort of tie there.
There's yes.
Right.
It was odd that he would only partner with those people, and the theory is that he may have been secular, so he practiced it, the Judaism in private. Yeah,
for fear of people.
Yes,
being anti-Semitic towards him.
Yeah,
right.
So I would believe that too. It blows my mind that people would be
right. Well, it's the same way they treated African Americans and Chinese. They had bias towards the religion. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I have that was my topics.
Yeah, well, good segue.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. No, it is Hanukkah. This is the 5th night of Hanukkah, which is fun to talk about and celebrate.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. For people that don't know what Hanukkah is, it's the Festival of Lights. Is kind of the play name, I guess. A holiday based around when the Jews were fighting the Romans, and the Romans burnt down the second temple in Jerusalem, and part of the group of the Jews were called the Maccabees that were fighting the Romans at the time, and they found enough oil during that time period to last 8 days and nights to basically kind of fend off the Romans at that time. So that's kind of like the overview of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is written, it's funny when you write in Hanukkah, Google or whatever text, there's like 3 or 4 different ways to like write Hanukkah. You see there's like CH, it's like spelled with 1 N or 2 N's, but there's actually no direct translation into English. It comes from the term, I can't pronounce the rest of it, but I should, Hanukkah Hazabah, meaning dedication of the altar. There's at least 16 different ways to spell Hanukkah.
Oh, wow.
There are many different translations of the word. Some start with the word with CH, as we just kind of talked about, as you would pronounce it in Hebrew, which is Hanukkah. Others prefer to angelicalize it with H sound. Americans often choose to spell it as just Hanukkah, because that's officially spelling from the Library of Congress.
Oh, okay.
So Library of Congress spells it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of this information I found, it's funny being Jewish, I kind of should know, a lot of this, but I was like, I'm just going to look it up just so I have it all my ducks in a row. But I found this on a website. It's actually called Learn Religions.
Okay.
So
That's
if
cool.
you need to find the website and Learn Religions, and the person that wrote it, her name is Ariel Paella, that Hanukkah is a Jewish holiday. It's referred to as the Festival of Lights. So 8 days and 8 nights. It typically starts on the 25th of the Jewish month of Kislev. So the Jewish months are different than, of course, like the Roman Greek calendar, it's totally different. It falls anywhere between late November, like it did this year, and early December, because it's on a secular calendar. So for 8 nights, families say prayers, they light candles, which is in an 8-branched candelabra, which is called a menorah.
Okay.
Most families also serve holiday foods. They sing songs, play games, give gifts, including Hanukkah gelt, which is basically just chocolate coins. So yeah, and Hanukkah story, it's based on historical events that took place in 165 BCE in Jerusalem. The Second Temple in Jerusalem was desecrated by the Emperor Antiochus IV and the Greco-Syrian troops. The Jewish priest Matthias and his sons rebelled. So they retook Jerusalem and the temple, and they lit the holy lamp, which was the menorah, and they had enough oil for 1 night, but miraculously the lamp stayed lit for 8 days until enough holy oil could be procured.
Amazing.
So Hanukkah, it's a minor Jewish holiday. There's other kind of high holidays in the Jewish religion. Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. Mm-hmm. And Yom Kippur is like a holiday where you basically like make atonement with God. You're basically like apologizing to God for all the things you've done almost. And then Purim is basically like the Jewish version of Easter. It's called Purim and Passover.
That's cool.
So
is that celebrated at the same time? Calendar,
it's around the same time, yeah. So it became a significant holiday in the Western world because of its proximity to Christmas, and kind of the desire among more secular Jews to kind of participate in the cultural build up around like the winter solstice.
Okay.
So as a result, gift giving, in addition to like traditional gift of Hanukkah gelt chocolate, is more popular in the Western than it is in other parts of the world. So they kind of just like, inserted themselves into kind of like Western culture. Like it's almost kind of like, when you have like one, like Home Depot and Lowe's kind of like battling for like, airtime or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So while traditions of Hanukkah are similar around the world, each country has its own unique twist. France, they light a double-decker 16-candle menorah. That's interesting.
That's cool.
Monaco, they fry treats with fruit juice and orange zest.
I'm in.
Right? Jewish holidays are calculated using the Hebrew calendar, which we kind of touched upon. It's based on a lunar cycle and the seasons. It was originally created in ancient times based on observations of the appearance of the crescent moon.
Very cool.
So that means the dates of holidays, they vary from year to year, based not on the Gregorian calendar, which is the Greek calendar, which is based on the phases of the moon. Some years are longer or shorter than others, but instead of adding like a leap day every 4 years, the Hebrew calendar adds a full lunar month to 7 out of every 19 years.
Crazy. That's interesting.
So the Jewish calendar, when you look at it, if you actually look at it, we're like in the year like 3,600 and something. It's kind of like crazy.
Sounds about right.
We're really in the future here.
Huh.
So the Hebrew calendar doesn't start on January because it starts in the fall. So Hanukkah falls on the 25th day of the third month, Kislev, which we already said. In longer years, Hanukkah occurs near the end of December, while in shorter years, it falls near the end of November.
That's so
okay.
Cool.
Well,
so
that makes sense. I didn't know that.
Huh.
How do we celebrate Hanukkah? Besides food and gifts, it's one of the less important holidays, which I disagree because I love Hanukkah. Yeah. Okay, it's important to me. Hanukkah was much more popular in modern practice because of its proximity to Christmas. I already kind of touched on that. So Hanukkah is truly a family event. It's all about enjoying time together. It's a kind of a community.
That's
so
cool.
I'm sure our friends in Odessa, I'm sure they've had some. I'm sure they had some Hanukkah celebrations.
Love it.
So every community has its unique Hanukkah traditions, but there's also some traditions that are almost universally practiced, which is like the 8 nights, the lighting of the menorah, which I won't get into, specifics. It's kind of self-explanatory, lighting of the menorah. Special foods, which was always my favorite. My wife, bless her heart, I have suckered her into making Jewish food. And one of them that she makes is something called a latke, which is literally just potatoes, flour, and just fried in oil. It's like a hash brown, but
it's amazing.
And for some reason, we eat it with applesauce.
Really?
I don't know how that came about, but it is so delicious.
I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had it with green onions and butter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but
applesauce. I'm willing to try applesauce.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just my household. I don't know. Blintzes we also eat, or thin pancakes wrapped around sweet cheese, filled and fried.
Hello.
Yeah. So other things we do is the dreidel, which is kind of fun to explain. It's a 4-sided top, and it has the Hebrew alphabet is, of course, different. So Nun, Gimel, Hey, and Shin are the letters that you'll see on the dreidel. The phrase is Nes Gamel Hayasham. This phrase means a great miracle happened there in Israel.
Oh, cool.
The play of the game, players place bets with foil-covered coins. So we start gambling early as a Jew, okay. Just kidding. So, so you basically place your bets. So wherever it's going to land on, you win that. So
okay. That's how you. Okay, I've always wondered how you. I knew there was a game, but I wondered.
Yeah, you I'll bet this amount of chocolate, whatever, and if it lands on this letter, you get the chocolate, whatever. But so yeah, and then lighting the menorah. It's 8 nights. There's actually 9 candles on the menorah. The middle candle is like when I grew up, we called it the helper candle, so that's what I'll continue to call it. Okay. So that candle lights the other candles, and you start from right to left.
Okay.
So each night you light the helper candle, you say your Jewish prayer, the Hanukkah prayer, and then you proceed so on until the end of Hanukkah. And then what we do in our house, we leave a little bit enough of the candles. That way on the 8th night, we can just burn all the candles together. So
that's awesome, man.
It's kind of Hanukkah in a nutshell. And I guarantee there will be probably somebody who's Jewish listening to this that probably will roll their eyes you did a terrible job of explaining Hanukkah. But Hanukkah to me is not, it's something that I should have been better at practicing. But as you get older, we live in Roseburg, Oregon, and the Jewish community, I would probably say it's me. So it's kind of hard to, fall in line with those kind of traditions that you grow up with. Mm-hmm. But you still, when you have kids, you want to show them and practice the things that were important to you as a kid.
Absolutely.
So, you go so long without doing something. It's like, well, gosh, it's so hard to remember. I have to Google it, but Hanukkah prayer, So.
That's amazing though.
Yeah.
I huge respect about it. Honestly, I think it's amazing. I don't have that kind of background. I don't have anything in my family the only traditions we pass down are literally like advent calendars and like goofy stuff that really just commercialized stuff, you know?
It's all tradition, though. Yeah, everyone's got their own tradition. Yeah. Hanukkah was always fun. It was always fun, you know, presents and stuff for my mom and going to, went to temple. And I always had to sit in the front row because my mom always had to make sure I was paying attention because I was always trying to book it out of there. So, but yeah, I just have great memories of celebrating Hanukkah and stuff. So
amazing.
Any questions?
It's funny you say that.
Q&A.
Man,
open up the phone lines. 1-800 is Hanukkah 8 letters. 1-800-Hanukkah.
From the food alone, part of me wonders. I'm like, everything you said, my mouth started watering. I'm like, I wonder. So it's just amazing. Like that would be. It's really cool. I huge respect for it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, growing up, my grandfather was literally from, when people say, I'm from the old country. Yeah, he was literally from the old country. And I remember him eating out of a jar pickled pig's feet. And it's disgusting as it imagery in your head. Yeah. A pig feet. Yeah, he ate that. It was absolutely disgusting. And then gefilte fish. I don't know if you know what gefilte fish is. I've seen it on the shelf. It's disgusting. Oof. But that was another thing consumed in my house, not me. If you know what matzo ball soup is, that was delicious. And then, of course, the latkes. Mm-hmm. And another thing that I don't know how this became a dish in my house, but it's literally the breakfast casserole, but we call it rocket crumply, and it's egg, sausage, and potatoes and sour cream, and you bake it as a casserole. Mm-hmm. But like I had it probably in 1999, and then I had it recently about like 4 years ago. And when you eat something and in your brain you have a flashback of being the last time the age of you ate that, it like took me back. Like I felt like I was in my living room growing up as a kid eating that. Like
that's amazing.
That's the food in general is just so amazing because no matter if you have something 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if you eat something today, it just takes you back to that point in time. I remember when we were eating a donut.
The same story. Yes.
When we were eating a donut, you said, I'm eating my childhood.
So the story is, everyone listening, we're at Blue Star Donuts in Portland, Oregon. I was already familiar with it, but they changed up their donuts, very gourmet, very delicious. Elliot and I went in there, and it was a powdered peanut butter and jelly.
It was jelly filled, and it was peanut butter powdered.
Yes, peanut butter powdered, jelly filled donut, served warm.
Yes.
And I will never forget, we both sat down to take a bite, and I think I don't know if you had a knife and fork, and you were being.
I was taking my time. I was like looking out the window. We were just having a mild conversation.
All I remember, this is how I remember it, is I took one bite of the donut. It was gone.
Yes.
I think I inhaled it, and I immediately was transported back to my childhood.
Yes.
Like it was like you could see stars.
I just ate my childhood, and underneath you was a light dusting of peanut butter.
It was a poof and it was gone. I was embarrassed, but I went on a journey, and I was glad you were there for that. Yes. That would always be a great story because I ate the thing so fast.
Right, and that's the power and magic of food.
Oh man,
and everyone can relate to food. So and we also can relate to Hanukkah jokes.
Yes.
So because Hanukkah's 8 days and 8 nights, I have 8 Hanukkah jokes.
Beautiful.
All right. So Alaka gave his mother a gift. As he did so, she said to him, "Oh, why are you so sweet?" He replied, "I guess that's just the way I am." So Alaka's a potato. That's just the way I am.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Isn't there...
I didn't read that so well.
I got to look this up. I don't want to make any accusations. Isn't this is like the Muppets Fozzie Bear type jokes? And I think he was Jewish.
I think right. Fozzie was Jewish.
Yes.
They had to get one. They had to get one in the Muppets. The
Muppets had to have it.
They had to be politically correct. Yeah. Which hand is better to light the menorah with? Neither. It's best to light it with a candle.
All right, that's fair. Because it's the one in the middle I learned, 2
menorahs are sitting in the window. The first one says, "Wow, it's getting hot with all these candles." The second one says, "Whoa, a talking menorah?"
Okay, I'm always happy with those jokes. Yeah.
All right. What did the older Hanukkah candle say to the younger one? "You're too young to smoke."
Nice. That's fair. That's fair.
What do you call the speck that falls into the latke pan? An unidentified frying object.
That fits so well with our podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
It was perfect. What did the stamp say to the Hanukkah card? stick with me and you go places.
There you go.
I mean,
that's gonna work.
It's a universal.
It's universal. I love
it. Why was the broom late for work after the Hanukkah party?
It got swept up.
It overswept.
Wow. Okay.
And to finish out, and to round out these wonderful jokes, with Hanukkah upon us, how does a Jewish man prepare his tea?
He brews it. He brews it. Yes.
Happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Happy Hanukkah. All right, El, where can I know if they want to email us, if they want to be a sponsor, if they have questions, organfilespodcast@yahoo.com.
Organfilespodcast@yahoo.com.
Yeah. Now where can people find this podcast if they are somehow not listening to it right now?
If you're not listening to us, please tell everyone we are on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. You can Google us. We will come up. Amazon Music,
YouTube,
iHeartRadio, YouTube. We have a Facebook page. You can follow us, like us. It's Oregon Files Podcast. That's about it. It's really wherever you get your podcast. You just look up Oregon Files Podcast, and we'll be there waiting for you. So please, listen.
Yeah.
We love you.
Thank you, guys.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.